Hi again, this is Hans Guerin. I'm an art mentor and professional artist. This is the subject for today, this sort of grumpy looking young ostrich, and it was a lot of fun. So you watch this painting unfold from very simple shapes to that abstract block-in of squint level shapes, some creative decisions along the way, and then fine textures and detail. All in one sitting. This was a 3-hour sitting with a live audience, and it was a lot of fun to have people, in attendance so that I could talk to them, answer questions, and just chit chat. So subscribe to this channel if you want to be alerted when the new lives come up, or if you want to look through my channel and see the videos that I produced and some of the opportunities that I post on there. Always like to have more people, and I love to talk shop, so please ask me questions, reach out to me. So here we go. A stage that I call mass conception. So these are very simple angles and shapes that roughly give me a proportion that I can measure and assess. And I like to build in my darks as solid dark masses. Just not a whole lot of decision making right now. Just simply what I see when I squint and simplify. But there is one little twist to that. I like to make all my shapes a little bit on the skinny side. I do that on purpose because I want to add the specificity to the edges. Basically, if I get it simplified and a little on the skinny side, then it's always just add that next little detail, add that next little detail. So this is going to get refined as I get more information. I'd much rather assess the simple stage than complex. Observe by squinting than to try to assume what an eye looks like or an ostrich beak looks like, which I'm no ostrich expert, so I definitely don't want to fall back on that sort of false expertise. But still, we all have an opinion of what an eye looks like, or a bird, or even a neck, or whatever, and we might totally miss the mark of what we're observing. So I do make a lot of creative decisions in this painting, but at first it's so much easier just to assess what's really there by ignoring what I think and just simply squinting and drawing what I see, with the simple version. So you saw those simple dark masses. Those are very flat. It's just a very thin coat of raw umber. And now I'm squinting and looking at value relationships in color. And these are just big blocky tiles because I can't see much else when I'm squinting. And so we're going to get just a simple guess down. Nothing's going to be right. I don't even trust any of this stuff. It's just going to be my first round of guessing. And if you have that attitude, you simply can't make a mistake. So nothing in here is either good or bad or artistic. And it's obviously not so. These are just guesses, and they're very flat and simple at that. I just do not attach my ego to these. This is just a guide for what's coming next. I also like the mentality of not calling it a mistake or not calling it a correction or not calling it good or bad or whatever, just simply for mindset purposes. If I can be a little indifferent about it and just call it just simple information, then I don't have to get upset if it's not looking good. In fact, I don't expect it to. I don't have to get upset if it's not looking accurate. It doesn't need to be. It's just putting down information that I can assess and adjust by. And so that's a different mentality than some other artists that might have a different approach. And I think the art world is just loaded with great examples of a lot of different ways. And I'm not going to criticize anybody. I'll tell you my way though. My way is to take guesses. Take educated guesses, and over time, those guesses get better and better and better. And you kind of find your strong points and weak points, and you address them. So, alternatively, we could measure everything. We could do little color studies on the side. We could do a very slow, calculated approach. That works for a lot of people. And again, I'm not here to criticize that. I'm just here to say what works for me. So I put some blue up there. I didn't like the blue. I was going to create a sort of a landscape feel back there, and I just it doesn't work. I don't have a whole lot of space to pull it off anyway. And I want this all about the ostrich, and I envision these little flips of little like ostrich hair. It looks like hair rather than feathers, but maybe an ostrich expert will dispel my ignorance. I don't know. But anyway, I'm painting what I see. I'm trying to describe it. So putting that in mind, I'm going to fill a lot of this space, and there's just not a whole lot of room to do anything really meaningful in the background. So I wanted to keep it simple and dark, something that I can read this bright kind of hair-like feathery texture to. Now I'm going to get some indication of the 5 values. So when I say 5 values, when I look at a sphere, I think of 5 categories. That if I can distinguish all those 5 categories from each other in their category, then I'm in really good shape because I've told the story of the light. So thinking of the white feathery hair-like things in this young ostrich in terms of what would it look like with a ball, we've got highlight values, we've got those glancing values where it's really, ricocheting quite well near the highlight and really rather dark, barely glancing near the shadow. Then I've got turning shadow, that's that moment where it's no longer facing the light source. There might be some reflected lights, although this photo really didn't show very many. I made mine up. And then there's cast shadow, that's where the light is being blocked. And if I can categorize everything that I see as far as volume facing a consistent light source that has a direction, an intensity, and a color to it, wow, I can make up so much after that. I can be inventive with color. I can have fun with my own shapes relative to those same 5 values in their category. And there's a clarity to it too, that the viewer will really understand that there's this sort of large wingless bird receiving light. And that's my goal at this point. It's not to be bird, it's not to be artistic, it's not to be an eye or a beak or whatever. It's these abstract shapes first. I simplify the drawing. I squint and only depict the tiles that I see when I squint. No details, no soft edges, nothing. And then these 5 values that really represent volume and light. And then I'm cooking. Then I can start making some decisions. Right now I'm just kind of refining a little bit. I'm taking those big broad categories and giving them a little bit of finesse. And so, just like I was saying with those glancing values, if it's facing the light source exactly, it's going to ricochet that light cleanly back to my eye. Those are highlight values. They're going to wash out the color. Near the highlight, we're going to get those rich colors. They're going to be more like the light source. If it's warm, it'll be a warm version of that color, and as it's turning away from the light, it'll get cooler. And vice versa if it's cool light. So now I've got my category of glancing lights. Turning shadow, it's just if it's a warm light source, make that cool. If it's a cool light source, make that warm. It all makes sense because the color of the light is obviously where the light's hitting. It's not where the light isn't. So if the light is putting a yellow into the light, it's not putting that yellow into the shadow. So the old adage of warm light, cool shadow, cool light, warm shadow, that's generally true. So I put a little hint of green in the reflected light under the bill, just kind of making it up that maybe there's grasses underneath this ostrich. It wasn't in the photo. I just thought there was a lot of possibility for putting another color pop in there. And it's not like I needed it. I like the photo a lot. It's just a fun creative decision. I remember at this stage not 100% sure that I was liking it. Like it was this really kind of rich green, and it probably just had to be supported by other information. But that goes to something that I really like to insist on, is I took a guess. I don't have to perfect it. I don't have to like it yet. I'm going to keep moving. Because a couple things might happen. As I get more information, I might find that I like it a lot better than I used to. It's in more context, and now it works, and before it didn't. But the other thing is true too, is like, say I still don't like it. Well, now I've got a lot of information to make it exactly what I want, rather than just taking another wild guess. Right here, I'm taking a couple chances with the eye. Again, I just thought maybe I needed a little bit more, and I had it blocked in the way I saw it, and then I tried it with a highlight and refracted light. That didn't really work. And then I tried it to where, okay, let's say the eye is completely in shadow and it might catch a little bit of the sky in the top of the eye. Really didn't like that either. So then I reverted back to the photo and I did one extra little addition. I made the eyelashes just maybe a little bit extra long and cover into that dark. And I like that decision a lot better. So now the focal area is fairly established. I might revisit it later, but It's pretty good. And I want to take a break from the head for a little bit. So when I'm ready to take a break, I find another area to kind of hack away at. And I just think, a good place to take a break from the face is right there in the neck. Develop a little bit of this texture. Um, I'm allowing the darkness of that undercoat to come through the little flecks that I put on top. So I made the guess at the value in the neck a touch on the dark side. I was thinking of like, well, there's a two-tier texture thing. There's a part that projects out that was kind of dark, and then there's the little cast shadows in between those little feather flecks or whatever. And that was the second tier of dark. So I blocked it in the second tier of dark and just wanted to superimpose the brighter stuff on top. I already had a reference to how bright the light is in the top of the head and in the cheek and on the side of the head near the beak. And I knew I can't go that bright. So I had a smaller box to fit that value into. And so I'm just kind of creating textures, maybe a little bit like what I was seeing in the photo, but there was really no pressure to get it right. It just had to have the same rhythm, the same direction, the same length of the hairs. And if I check all those boxes, that could be my own design. I don't have to copy tuft for tuft unless you're comparing it side by side to the photo reference. Who would know? I don't think anybody would. And so that's the kind of creative freedom you can give yourself if you're not like a slave to the photo. I don't like to be beholden to the photo. I like to feel like I'm the creator here. And the photo is just a guide. It's a model. Okay, so the fun part. I loaded up the brush with a lot of oil, and it's a really kind of gnarly brush. I didn't clean this brush well. I didn't take care of it very good. Not on purpose, but this stuff happens. And now with the rattle, sort of flaky edges and that, oil-laden paint, I could just flick it into that very thin paint into the background, and it leaves those little hairs. But that little bit of randomness from the really kind of disheveled brush, I don't know, made it easy and fun. And yeah, there's some feel there that has to be developed over time. So it might not be easy and fun for somebody just trying this for the first time, but this isn't my first rodeo. So I kind of knew what I was doing with this. And I knew that because I scumbled in the background instead of a brushstroke is a intentional drag of paint. It has a thickness, it has a direction, it has a color, it has a value. But scumbling is more of like a scribble of paint. You're moving in multiple directions. You're creating some air in there. The board is coming through a little bit with translucency or transparency. And it's very thin. So flicking this paint from the solid part flipped up and out into the background, left those little hair shapes, and it went from having potential to something I really liked. It was like, whoa, that worked. I was having a really fun time after that. So I really picked up on it. And sometimes these little experiments don't work. I could wipe it out and try it again. Those edges, bring the background in. Or I could get out a tiny detail brush and do some flecks, and that would take a little bit longer, and I don't think it would have that fun chaos to it. But I did respect the direction of the hairs and the length of the hair as well as flicking this sort of ratty brush with thin paint flipping out into the background. I was mindful of that. So it was grounded by the direction and length of the hairs, but I had a whole lot of fun with it. All right, so now I'm refining. I'm getting some intricacy to that really kind of square-like nostril opening that I observed in the photo. I guess that's an ostrich thing. Who knew? I didn't. But again, because I don't know ostriches, I better copy what I see, because I don't know what I can get away with and what I can't. And so it's not like a figure that's not a commission. I mean, I know my human anatomy. I've done many, many studies. I've looked at different people in different lights and different positions, and I've experimented a lot. So if there's something that changed with the model moving, or I ran out of time and had to invent a foot or something, or I needed a problem solved because the initial drawing wasn't quite right, I can do all that. I can make it up. I can make up figures, although they're usually going to be a little bit more generic than looking at a real model. But I'm much more confident in making things up for a human figure than I would be an ostrich. I guess that's a long-winded way of saying that. Subscribe to my channel. We have a whole lot of fun here, painting live, and for the most part, it's going to be me explaining what I'm doing and talking about my process and what I'm anticipating. But also too is when I do something that either was undisciplined and I know better, I'll point it out, or if I just make a bad mistake, a bad guess of value, or a bad judgment. I like to point it out, and I like to explain the problem solve. I like to say how, okay, this didn't work, so let's try this. This didn't work, so let's try that. And it's not self-effacing. It's just simply that's art. You're not really always going to guess right. And there's a little bit of the process of where you put some things down, and the painting sort of speaks to you. It tells you, uh, maybe it shows you something that you didn't expect. Something's looking really cool, and maybe that wasn't going to be the focal point, but now it's like, whoa, I want to really play that up. Or something, there's a color exchange that maybe it was a happy accident, and you're just like, you're going to embrace that. Sometimes you put something down in the painting saying, okay, this idea you have, it's just not working. Try something else. And I really do like to have that sort of dialogue with my artwork, especially Alla Prima, where you have this time component. You got to get it done in one sitting. It's not like, okay, I'll just let it dry, I'll sand it, I'll fix it on the next sitting, or I'll glaze that brightness down, or bring together this thing that's kind of overly contrasted. Alla Prima, you just got to get it done in one sitting. Which brings me to another really key point is, let's say you're one of these artists that like to do like 20 sittings and really polish it and get to a high detail. I do lots of those paintings. I'm definitely not saying it as pejorative, but even if that you're inclined to paint that way, I would still recommend a lot of Alla Prima, a lot, because you're gonna do experiments every time. You're gonna get more feel for the paint. You're gonna get new things to react to, different light sources, different subject matters, different problem solves, and so this is your major skill builder, and maybe you don't get a whole lot of results out of it. So what? You're going to build a ton of skill, and then over time you do get these little, Alla Prima paintings that put a frame on them and sell them because they are popular. They have got that spontaneity of the brushstroke. They've got that artistic imperfection, right? So if you look at some of the great artwork of all time, is it flawless anatomy or perspective or anything? I mean, some of them are really super accurate, but some of them, there's just little quirky things that make it just extra awesome. Not necessarily a mistake, but sometimes it is. I mean, we've been observing these paintings and loving them for hundreds of years after the artist dies. So that tells you, it's like, the spontaneity of these little artistic mistakes, and even if like you have some kind of key ones that happen particularly for your style and things like that make your artwork extra kind of personal to you. I think that's really awesome. Alla Prima brings that out. It's really a way of building these skills and understanding your craft a lot more, even if maybe it's a win some, lose some. But you do enough of these, more will turn out than not. And I hope you enjoyed this one. And again, I'll annoy you by encouraging you to subscribe to my channel one last time, and observe my videos, give me comments and feedback, even criticisms if you got them. Just let me know your mind. I love talking art, and I really appreciate you watching this video. So with that, the signature's on the painting, and I'm done.